The red recording light wasn't supposed to be on. That's what made the whole moment feel wrong before a single word was even spoken. Like the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something it had been denied for years. Vincent Herbert sat alone in the studio, half-lit by a weak overhead glow and the dull blue shine of an equipment screen. The walls were still the same. The console was still the same. The microphone stand still sat where it always did, like a witness that never moved, never blinked, and never forgot. This wasn't just any studio. This was the studio where Tamar once sang through heartbreak and ambition, where she chased the kind of notes that make people stop what they're doing and listen, where laughter had bounced around the room like it belonged there, where love, arguments, jealousy, wins, losses, every emotional extreme had been poured into sound and turned into something sellable. But tonight, the air felt colder than it should have been. Not because of the temperature, because of the history. Vincent stared at the mic for a long time. The kind of stare people give when they're not seeing the object in front of them, but the memories behind it. He rubbed his hands once, slow, deliberate, like a man preparing to do something he might regret. Then, without ceremony, he pressed record. A quiet click. A faint buzz. And that tiny red light, steady and unforgiving, came alive. His voice came out calm. Too calm. Calm in the way a person gets when they've already cried enough tears to drown and still had nothing change. Calm like resignation. Calm like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, not yelling, not panicking, just finally accepting that the fall is coming either way. For years, he began, and the words sounded almost measured, I protected the Braxton family. He paused, not for dramatic effect, but like the sentence itself weighed a ton. I kept my mouth shut. I covered the mess. I paid the bills nobody ever saw. The room didn't react, but the energy shifted. It always does when someone speaks a truth they've avoided for too long. But they don't get to call me the villain anymore. A breath, shaky this time. The calm in his voice didn't mean he wasn't breaking. It meant he was breaking quietly. They took everything, he continued, voice tightening. Tamar, she looted my accounts. Money I saved for our family, money meant for our son, and when it was gone, suddenly I'm the bad guy. The camera, if there even was one, didn't need to capture what the words already did. The studio felt like it was listening, like it was been waiting years for someone to finally admit what was happening behind the polish, behind the brand, behind the smiles. Vincent leaned closer to the mic, lowering his voice into something almost private. You want secrets, he said. I have them, all of them. Another pause, longer. And tonight, he whispered, I'm done protecting the Braxtons. That was the spark. The internet doesn't need context when emotion is this raw. It doesn't need a timeline or paperwork when a voice sounds like it's shaking from a wound. It only needs one clip. One leak. One sentence that makes people feel like they're hearing something they weren't supposed to hear. And from that second forward, whether Vincent meant to or not, the firestorm was already coming. Before the headlines, there was love. Because long before money became the villain, long before court filings and internet debates, there was love. Real love. Not the kind built for cameras. Not the kind that thrives on public approval. Vincent and Tamar, before they became a cautionary tale, were two people who believed music could heal anything, even the parts of them that were broken before they ever met. Their earliest days weren't perfect, but they were full. Full of ambition. Full of late-night studio sessions that turned into sunrise. Full of phone calls where no one wanted to hang up first. Full of promises whispered like prayers, the kind you say when you really think love will last forever if you hold it tight enough. Vincent believed he'd found purpose in Tamar, not just romance, purpose. And Tamar believed she'd finally found someone who saw her beyond the Braxton name. Because that name wasn't just famous. It was a legacy. A machine. A powerhouse of sisters. Talent, ego, trauma, history, and unspoken rules all woven together like fabric so tight it could choke. Anyone stepping into that circle needed armor. Vincent didn't know that at first. He walked in with an open heart and an open wallet, thinking family loyalty meant protection. He learned quickly it meant politics. Sides. Secrets. Smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Every sister had a story. Every sister had a wound. And every disagreement, even the smallest one, could grow into a war nobody admitted they were fighting. Evelyn, the matriarch, demanded respect and control in equal measure. Tony, the icon, was always balancing superstardom with family obligations that never ended. Twanda and Trina carried their own pain quietly, often overshadowed, often expected to stay loyal even when they were hurting. And Tamar was the fire. Loud, talented, emotional, brilliant, impulsive. A star that didn't just want to shine. She needed everything around her to burn bright too. Vincent adored that fire. Fed it. Funded it. Built careers and projects around it. When the world doubted Tamar, Vincent doubled down. When people called her too much, too loud, too dramatic, Vincent convinced himself that what they called too much was what made her special. He believed if he gave everything, the world would give her back what she deserved. But giving everything has a cost. And slowly, quietly, that cost started collecting interest. When a husband becomes a bank. As Tamar's fame rose, Vincent slipped into a role most men never survive. Being the backbone, without ever being treated like the hero. He wasn't the star. He was the machine behind the star. He pushed tour, paid dancers, covered studio time, settled family disagreements with checks, contracts, favors, and quiet phone calls. And without realizing it, he began paying for things that weren't even his responsibility. According to Vincent's version of events, what he implied in that recording, there were production accounts with charges that looked less like business and more like family expenses. Dinners, travel, glam bookings, emergency expenses. Things labeled as for the family. At first, he brushed it off. What's a few thousand when you're building an empire? But a few thousand became tens of thousands. Then it turned into numbers you don't ignore. Then a label deal went south. Then an album needed more funding. Then a show needed emergency production financing. And suddenly, Vincent wasn't just a husband. He was a bank. The kind of bank people don't thank until it's empty. He tried to speak on it privately. But Tamar was always under pressure. Career pressure. Family expectations. Internet criticism. Every conversation about money turned into a conversation about loyalty, support, belief. Do you still believe in me? That question, whether Tamar said it directly or indirectly, became the emotional weapon that ended every argument. And Vincent backed down. Not because he was weak, because he loved her. And loving Tamar meant choosing peace even when he was drowning. There were good days too. Holidays where the house filled with music and the air smelled like food and laughter. Days Tamar cooked while laughing loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. Studio nights where they danced like they were still dating, like none of the pressure existed. Vincent never forgot those moments. And that made everything worse. Because love doesn't soften betrayal. Love sharpens it. The moment everything cracked, then the rumors started. The internet did what it always does, speculated, exaggerated, turned private tension into public entertainment. People who didn't know either of them decided who was right and who was wrong based on edited clips and gossip headlines. And in a lot of those narratives, Vincent became the villain. Controlling. Manipulative. The husband holding Tamar back. Vincent swallowed it. He swallowed the insults, swallowed the assumptions, swallowed the public humiliation. Hopping time would fix things. But one morning, according to the story you've built here, Vincent checked his business account and froze. Transactions passed what he approved. Funds moved. Withdrawals he didn't make. And one name connected to the transfers was painfully familiar. Tamar. He didn't confront her immediately. Because when betrayal is coming from someone you love, the first reaction is rarely rage. It's denial. He paced for hours, replaying every memory of trust, trying to convince himself there had to be an explanation. When he finally asked where the money went, it wasn't calm. It wasn't a quiet sit-down. It became an argument, voices rising, doors slamming, words thrown like knives. She said she needed to secure projects the label wasn't supporting. She said family needed help. She said he was supposed to believe in her. But Vincent didn't hear belief. He heard fear, desperation, a woman burning faster than he could fuel. And still, he went silent again, chose love over confrontation. But inside, something cracked. Because even if you don't fight back in the moment, your heart keeps receipts. Divorce didn't start the damage, it revealed it. When the divorce came later, the public saw what it always sees. Arguments, rumors, sound bites, a messy split. But they didn't see the years of sacrifices invisible to fans. They didn't see Vincent crying alone in a studio he built for Tamar's dreams. They didn't see him quietly selling assets to cover debts nobody but him knew existed. And they definitely didn't see what he found later. Records of withdrawals, digital signatures, financial logs that suggested things might have gone further than he ever said publicly. That's why his voice shook on the recording. He wasn't angry. He was wounded. A man who poured himself into a family who, at least in his telling, took until there was nothing left to take. Now, Vincent breaking his silence wasn't just about money. It was about a story he believed the world got wrong. And the moment that clip hit the internet, whether intentionally or accidentally, the narrative turned into war. The clip that lit the internet on fire. The audio wasn't supposed to be public. But that's the thing about celebrity worlds. Privacy doesn't exist the moment someone senses a headline. One clip leaked. Just 22 seconds. A trembling voice. A sentence that sounded like pain. "I didn't lose the money," he said in that snippet. "It was taken from me." That was enough. Hashtags trended. Comment sections flooded with disbelief. Some defended Tamar fiercely. Others said Vincent had been quiet too long for there not to be something behind his tone. But the full recording, your script suggests, was worse. Because the full recording didn't just claim loss. It hinted at planning, coordination, a deeper betrayal. Vincent's voice got heavier as he continued. "People think I left because of arguments or reality show tension," he said. "But the breaking point wasn't the fights. It wasn't the rumors. It wasn't even the disrespect." Pause. "It was the day I discovered the offshore transfer." Those words hit differently. Because offshore doesn't sound like a misunderstanding. Offshore sounds like strategy. Like steps. Like planning that started long before anyone said divorce. Vincent described logging into an account tied to royalties, money linked to future projects, production deals, long-term security, only to find nearly $1.2 million missing. Money meant to build, to sustain, to protect, to secure their son. And it was gone. At first, he thought it had to be fraud. Identity theft. Someone using Tamar's credentials. But as he traced the authorizations through accountants and financial managers, one name kept appearing. Tamar. And the transfers, he claimed, were initiated using Tamar's email with private access only she possessed. That was the moment his chest collapsed inward. Because this wasn't petty couple drama. This was betrayal at a level marriage vows were never built to hold. He still gave her a chance to explain. He walked into the house calm, hopping for misunderstanding. "We need to talk about the missing funds," he said. And Tamar didn't react with guilt. She reacted with fire. She refused to admit wrongdoing, saying, according to this narrative, that she moved money to protect her own future because she feared Vincent would take everything if their marriage failed. She thought she was securing herself. But to Vincent, it sounded like she'd already decided it was over long before he realized. The arguments escalated fast, not because of the money alone, but because Vincent finally admitted something he'd hidden for years. I feel like I've been building everyone but myself. And in relationships, that sentence is usually the beginning of the end. The folder that changed everything. Then came the discovery. Not a rumor. Not a blog headline. Something tangible. Vincent, during a later studio session, found a folder on a shared drive. It was misfiled under something harmless. Vocal stems. Production drafts. Something no one would suspect. Inside were scanned pages. Expense reports. Contract drafts. Personal notes. Not in Vincent's writing. In Tamar's handwriting. Lists with titles like Assets to Move, Accounts under VH Properties, Shared Signature, and one note circled in red, twice, stood out like a warning. Discuss with Trina before final step. That's when Vincent reportedly realized this didn't look like a panicked emotional move. It looked planned. He kept reading. And at the bottom of the file, the page that changed everything, was a draft agreement between Tamar and a third-party investor. It proposed transferring ownership of certain intellectual rights under Tamar's name alone. Projects they created together. Albums he helped finance. Deals he negotiated. A vision they built as partners. And he had no idea she was preparing to separate those assets legally. To split the empire, before the empire even officially broke. That's when he finally snapped. Not with rage. With clarity. Because it wasn't just money. It was control. And the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was structural. The twist that made it bigger than Tamar. And then came the part that turned messy divorce into family conspiracy. At least in the way the internet started framing it. A digital receipt attached to the file. It showed part of the money, allegedly, not all, but enough, moved to an account owned by someone unexpected. Not Tamar. Not Evelyn. Not any name people were already screaming online. A relative. Someone outside the spotlight. Someone the public never thought was involved. Someone who stayed quiet through every season, every headline, every scandal. Vincent stared at the screen and whispered words that would change the temperature of the entire story. Tamar didn't take it alone. He swallowed. Someone else helped remove it. Someone with our trust. Our passwords. Our access. Then he leaned into the mic and said the line the internet couldn't stop repeating. And when I reveal who it is, the world will never look at the Braxton family the same again. That was where the war started. Not because people knew the truth, but because people smelled a secret. And nothing spreads faster online than the idea that a respected legacy is hiding something rotten underneath. The internet starts hunting. From that point forward, every Braxton fan page became a detective agency. Every podcast turned into a courtroom. Every clip from old episodes was examined like evidence in a trial. People searched for moments where a sister avoided eye contact. Jokes about money that suddenly didn't sound like jokes. Arguments that looked too emotional to be just TV. And the same question kept repeating. Which Braxton did he mean? Tony felt too polished, too distant. Toanda was rumored, by fans, to be in the middle of business things. Trina was always overlooked, silent but observant. Evelyn, matriarch, strategist, controller, felt powerful enough to move pieces without anyone questioning her. Meanwhile, Vincent stayed quiet after the initial wave. Not celebrating, Not bragging. Not doing victory laps. Friends said he barely ate. Barely slept. Just stared at the chaos online like a man watching the house he once lived in burn to the ground. Because the worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's watching the world debate whether you deserved it. Tamar breaks, but not the way people expected. 3 days later, after silence, after rumors, after fans screaming for her response, Tamar went live. No glam. No stage lighting. No performance. Hair pulled back. Eyes swollen. Voice unsteady. "I never meant to hurt him," she began, shaking. "I just wanted to be safe." That line split the internet instantly. Because safe can mean many things. Safe from losing money. Safe from losing control. Safe from a man she felt could hurt her. Safe from feeling powerless. But then Tamar dropped her own threat, one that made the audience realize this wasn't one-sided. "Everybody thinks Vincent is innocent," she said, voice breaking. "But you don't know what I lived through." Pause. "There are things I haven't said." And then the sentence that hit like a warning. "If I open that door, you'll never see him the same." The chat exploded. Thousands begging for details. Thousands telling her to stop. Thousands defending Vincent. But Tamar didn't elaborate. She ended the live abruptly, like she said too much, too fast. And suddenly, the world was more confused than ever. Was she admitting guilt? Was she hinting at abuse? Was she warning that Vincent had his own secrets? Or was it emotional deflection? Nobody knew. But one thing became undeniable. This story was no longer about money. It was about legacy, loyalty, power, and who the world would choose to believe. And just when fans thought things reached maximum chaos, another voice entered the battlefield. A voice nobody expected. The internet barely had time to breathe after Tamar's live. That's how fast this story moved, like something that had been waiting in the dark for years, just needing one crack in the wall to spill out. People were still arguing in comment sections, still replaying Tamar's words. "You'll never see him the same," still split between sympathy and suspicion. And then a new voice entered the battlefield. Not a sister, not a producer, not a blogger chasing clicks. Someone who, if she was telling the truth, had been inside the most private rooms of all. The voice nobody expected, the nanny. It started as a short clip. 32 seconds. No fancy editing, no intro music, no dramatic lower third. Just a woman sitting in a car, shaky hands, shaky voice. The kind of fear you hear when someone knows they're about to get swallowed by a storm. She introduced herself only loosely, enough to imply credibility, not enough to be easily tracked. And then she said the line that made people sit up straight. "Y'all dragging Vince like he's some monster," she said, "but I saw things with my own eyes." That one sentence changed the temperature. Because fans can debate a divorce all day. They can argue about fame, pressure, and emotional outbursts. But a third-party witness, someone who lived in the home, around the child, in the middle of the day-to-day chaos, that hits differently. She continued. That money didn't disappear accidentally. It was planned. Then she added the part that sent the internet into a full sprint. And it wasn't just Tamar and Tawanda. Someone else helped move it, someone y'all never talk about. Then she paused, long enough that it felt like she was listening for footsteps. "The truth is deeper than money," she whispered. "The transfer was part one. There was something bigger they were planning, something Vincent found before they could finish." And then she said the sentence that turned the clip into a threat. "I kept quiet to keep my job, but if this gets worse, I'll show everything. Texts, screenshots, bank logs, I got proof." The clip ended right there. No name. No follow-up. No receipts. Just a million people staring at their screens, suddenly realizing this wasn't going away. The accidental detail people zoomed in on. Here's the problem with the internet. It does not watch videos. It dissects them. Within minutes, people were zooming in, enhancing, freezing frames. TikTok detectives started pulling out slow motion like they were analyzing surveillance footage. And then somebody noticed something small, something the nanny probably didn't even realize she showed. On the passenger seat, a document. Not fully visible, but visible enough. And one single word stood out clearly. Trust fund. That's when the whole narrative took a darker turn. Because money moved in divorce, people can argue that. Money moved for projects, people can debate that. But trust fund implies something long-term, something designed to be untouchable, something meant to lock assets away from somebody. And immediately, the question became, a trust fund for who? For Logan? For Tamar? For the family? Or to cut Vincent out? The second leak, the whisper that changed everything. As the nanny clip went viral, another piece of footage surfaced. Not the entire studio confrontation, not a clean, full recording, just a longer segment than what people had seen before. In this one, the audio was clearer. And in the background, barely audible, but there if you listened with headphones, Tamar was heard whispering something to Tawanda. A sentence that made people stop, rewind, then stop again. Once the trust is finalized, she allegedly said, he can't touch any of it. The internet went quiet for one breath, then exploded. Because if that whisper was real, and if it was truly Tamar's voice, it meant the story wasn't just about fear or emotional chaos. It suggested planning. It suggested a strategy. Not just to protect Tamar, but to remove Vincent. To lock him out. To restructure ownership. To ensure that no matter what happened, his hands were off the money and off the assets. And suddenly, Tamar's lie didn't sound like defensiveness anymore. It sounded like regret. The kind of regret that comes when you did something you can justify in your own mind, but cannot justify once the world starts looking at it. The alleged email that made things worse. Then came the leak that pushed this from viral mess into potential legal nightmare. An email. Allegedly. Timestamped before the divorce. Said to be between Evelyn Braxton and an attorney one publicly recognized. Subject line. Trust finalization. One line in particular lit the internet on fire. Remove Vincent from beneficiary status. Now, if the email was real, it meant the plan wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. It was strategic. And it started long before the marriage officially ended. But if the email was fake, that also meant something terrifying. Someone was committed to burning the Braxton legacy to the ground, and they were willing to manufacture evidence to do it. Either way, the damage didn't care what was real. Because online, perception becomes reality faster than truth can catch up. Sponsors started hesitating. Producers started reviewing projects. And industry people, especially the ones with money involved, don't stay in the middle of scandals they can't control. The Braxtons go silent, but the house allegedly erupts. Publicly, the family tightened up. No long statements. No direct denials. No full explanations. But the rumor mill claimed privately, the Braxton household was in chaos. According to online chatter and alleged insider whispers, Tony reportedly demanded an emergency family meeting. Trina allegedly arrived furious, accusing Tamar and Tawanda of dragging the family name into dirt. Tawanda allegedly defended herself, saying she was stealing. She was helping Tamar secure independence. Evelyn allegedly stood firm, insisting any signatures were to protect the family assets. And Tamar. People said Tamar cried, not the kind of crying you do for an audience, but the kind that comes when a secret you carried for years finally becomes too heavy to hold. Everybody thinks I'm the villain, she allegedly said through tears. I did what I had to do. Nobody knows what it was like. Evelyn's alleged response, reported in gossip circles, was cold and controlled. I did what I had to do to protect this family. Protect. A word that sounds like love, but can also sound like control. Tony, according to rumors, said the one sentence that made everyone freeze. If this comes out fully, she allegedly warned, it won't hurt Vince, it will destroy us. And that was the truth hiding underneath everything. This wasn't just about Vincent and Tamar. This was about a legacy built in public. A family brand. A dynasty. And if the public decided the dynasty was rotten, it would collapse from the inside out. Vincent doesn't celebrate, he prepares. Here, what made it eerie. Vincent wasn't going live every night. He wasn't posting cryptic stories. He wasn't doing interviews in the middle of the storm. He stayed quiet. And that kind of quiet makes people nervous. Because loud scandals are usually emotional. Quiet scandals are usually legal. And then, a report began circulating that Vincent was preparing something bigger than a clip. A full sit-down interview. Receipts. Documents. Timeline. The kind of interview where somebody doesn't just say, I was wronged. They prove it. And the idea of that sent panic through the fandom, because once a person starts showing paperwork, the internet stops debating feelings and starts debating facts. Tamar's cryptic warning. Tamar, after her live, went silent. No posts. No tweets. No, let me clear this up. Nothing. Just one Instagram story. A black screen. 5 words. You think you know. That was it. And fans read it like a warning. Others read it like a promise. Because in celebrity wars, silence is never empty. Silence is leverage. It means I have something too. The private meeting, love meets evidence. Behind the scenes, according to your story structure, Vincent wanted one thing before he went nuclear. Closure. Not public closure. Not a performance. Private closure. So he requested a meeting with Tamar through her team. Days passed. Finally, she agreed. They met at a studio. The same studio where he recorded the tape. Fate has a cruel sense of humor. Tamar walked in wearing black, sunglasses on, chin raised like armor. She didn't come in with softness. She came in prepared. Vincent turned from the console, eyes tired but calm. And the conversation started without greetings, without fake politeness. We could have handled this between us, Tamar said. I tried, Vincent replied, for years. She exhaled sharply, like she hated the truth in his voice. Are you really going to drag my family like this? Vincent didn't raise his voice. He didn't clap back. He said the sentence that every betrayed person eventually says. I'm not dragging anyone. I'm telling what happened. Tamar hesitated. Something flickered in her face. Maybe recognition, maybe regret, maybe anger. You think I don't regret how this ended? She asked softly. You think I didn't love you? And for 1 second, the room changed. For 1 second, they weren't public figures. They weren't headlines. They were 2 people who once built a life together and didn't know how to break gently. But Vincent couldn't stay in that softness. Because softness doesn't erase missing money. Softness doesn't erase planning. Softness doesn't erase betrayal. He opened his laptop. Pressed play. On the screen, the grainy video, Tamar and Tawanda sitting together, papers around them, speaking quietly like they believed nobody was watching. Tamar watched herself, younger, confident, unaware she was being recorded. Her face drained of color. Her hand trembled. This is why you called me, she whispered. No, Vincent said, voice low. This is why I stayed quiet. Silence fell again. Heavy and dangerous. Tamar didn't deny it, not fully. She closed her eyes long enough for tears to gather, but not fall. Then she tried to justify it. I wasn't trying to rob you, she whispered. I was trying to protect myself. You were controlling, Vince. Vincent leaned forward, eyes steady. Protecting yourself doesn't require taking from me. And that's the moment Tamar's defense cracked, not with words, but with the lack of them. Because sometimes silence is the closest thing to confession. The second twist, the third name. Then Vincent dropped the detail that made Tamar's breath catch. I have proof it wasn't just you and Towanda, he said. There's a third name on the paperwork. Tamar's eyes snapped open. Fear and confusion collided in her face. What third name? She asked. Vincent didn't answer. He slid a printed document across the table. Tamar picked it up. Read. Then froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. And she whispered one word. Mom. Evelyn Braxton. Signature. Witness. Approval. Not a rumor. Not a guess. Ink on paper. Tamar stood so fast, the chair tilted backward. She paced, hands shaking. It was temporary, she started. It was for taxes. But her voice cracked mid-sentence. Because whatever the reason was, it didn't change what it looked like. Towanda helped move funds. Evelyn signed off. Tamar became the face. Vincent became the casualty. And suddenly, the betrayal wasn't just sister deep. It was maternal. It was systemic. It looked coordinated. And whether that coordination came from fear or power, the result was the same. Vincent's trust, according to this narrative, was destroyed on every level at once. The leak that followed the meeting. Vincent left that studio knowing something. Even if he didn't want war. War wanted him. Because private conversations don't stay private. Not with this many eyes hungry for drama. Within 48 hours, footage leaked again. Not the full meeting. Not the full documents. Just pieces. Tamar packing. Towanda's name spoken. The word offshore. And the blurred shape of a document with Evelyn's signature. No context. No explanation. Just enough to ignite the internet into a frenzy. Twitter didn't walk. It sprinted. Instagram didn't scroll. It combusted. YouTube channels went live instantly with thumbnails screaming. BRAXD1S stole millions. EVLN exposed. TAMAR plus TOWNDA secret trust. Fans turned into prosecutors overnight. And the worst part, once the internet decides you're guilty, it doesn't wait for evidence. It demands punishment first, then asks questions later. The family fractures in public. The family's public silence didn't stop the cracks from showing. Fans noticed small things. A sister unfollowing another. Cryptic posts about loyalty. Lyrics about betrayal. A black screen with one sentence, family is complicated. It wasn't confirmation. But in internet language, it was close enough. And the longer the Braxtons avoided direct answers, the louder the theories got. Because silence, especially from a family built on visibility, sounds like fear. The question that changes everything. At this point, the story was who stole money. It became who planned the trust, who moved assets, who decided Vincent should be removed. And if Tamar is saying she acted out of protection. Protection from what? Because that's the part she threatened. That door, she called it. The door that would make fans never see him the same. So now the audience wasn't just watching a money scandal. They were waiting for the counter-accusation. Waiting for Tamar's version of Vincent. Waiting to see if this becomes legal war, reputation war, or something darker. And just when it looked like the next step would be Vincent's interview, one more detail surfaced that made the internet realize this story still wasn't finished. Because the nanny, after going viral, didn't disappear. She posted again. Not a full receipt drop. Just one line. One sentence. and it sounded like a threat aimed at everybody. "They think the trust fund is the end," she wrote. "That's just the cover." "They think the trust fund is the end," the nanny wrote. "That's just the cover." Those 9 words landed heavier than any leaked clip, any whispered audio, any blurred document. Because up until now, the internet believed it was piecing together a finished puzzle. Money moved. Trust created. Vincent removed. Messy, ugly, possibly strategic, but understandable if fear was the motive. But the cover implies something far more dangerous. It implies that what people are arguing about publicly is not the real story. The theory that changed everything. Within hours, new theories began circulating, not from blogs this time, but from financial analysts, entertainment lawyers, and industry insiders who quietly joined the conversation. According to these theories, theories, the trust fund may not have been created just to protect assets from divorce. It may have been created to restructure ownership quietly before a major financial event. A catalog sale. A rights transfer. A back-end payout. Something big enough that, once finalized, Vincent would permanently lose leverage, no matter what he proved later. And suddenly, the timeline made sense to people who hadn't believed Vincent before. Why the transfers happened before the divorce. Why signatures mattered more than arguments. Why the nanny said, Part 1. If true, this wasn't emotional chaos. It was financial chess. Why Vincent's silence became the loudest sound. As speculation spiraled, Vincent still didn't speak. And that silence became terrifying. Because people who are bluffing usually talk. People with receipts usually wait. Sources began whispering that Vincent's legal team advised him to say nothing until one moment, the sit-down. A controlled interview. A neutral host. Documents verified. Emails authenticated. Timelines locked. Not drama. Evidence. And the industry noticed. Because if Vincent produced verifiable proof that assets were moved without consent, or worse, coordinated by multiple parties, it wouldn't just be a divorce scandal. It would be career-ending. Tamar's final silence. Tamar didn't respond again. No clarification. No denial. No apology. No counterproof. And in celebrity culture, silence after a threat usually means one of 2 things. Either you're being advised not to speak, or you're preparing something of your own. Fans began rewatching her live, this time hearing it differently. I just wanted to be safe. There are things I haven't said. If I open that door, it no longer sounded like defensiveness. It sounded like someone who knew the truth would hurt everyone, including herself. Evelyn's shadow over everything. Evelyn Braxton's alleged signature, whether ultimately proven real or not, became the emotional center of the storm. Because mothers aren't supposed to choose sides. They're supposed to protect children from fallout, not participate in it. And if Evelyn truly approved financial moves that excluded Vincent, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was a transfer of power. From husband to blood. From marriage to legacy. From partnership to control. And once that idea took hold, fans couldn't unsee it. Old interviews. Old family dynamics. Old moments where decisions felt centralized. Everything was reinterpreted through a new lens. The internet reaches a dangerous point. By now, this wasn't gossip anymore. It was a pressure cooker. Sponsors quietly paused. Projects stalled. Deals were reevaluated. Not because guilt was proven, but because risk became real. Because brands don't wait for truth. They wait for certainty. And nobody knew what certainty was coming next. The final choice. Here, where the story truly ends for now. Not with proof. Not with confession. Not with vindication. But with a choice. Vincent can speak fully and fracture a family forever. Tamar can open her door and change how the world sees a man she once loved. Tawanda can explain her role, or let silence define it. Evelyn can defend protection, or accept control as her legacy. Or everyone can stay quiet and let the internet finish the story for them. Because one thing is no longer debatable. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not simple marital tension. This was not accidental. It was intentional enough to leave scars that won't fade. The question that matters now. So now the spotlight shifts to you, the audience. Not as fans, not as defenders, but as observers of something real and ugly and human. Who do you believe right now, based only on what we've seen? Is Vincent a victim who stayed quiet too long? Did Tamar and Tawanda act out of survival or strategy? Was Evelyn protecting her family or controlling it? And who is the real beneficiary behind the trust? Because one thing is clear. This story isn't finished. It's paused. And when the next move happens, whether it's a sit-down interview, a legal filing, or a receipt drop, the internet won't just react. It will choose sides. And when that happens, someone will lose more than money. They'll lose the story. Drop your theories below, even the wild ones. This comment section is about to turn into a courtroom. Hit like if you want the full sit-down breakdown when it drops. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the nanny's receipts if she releases them. Turn on notifications, because when the truth finally lands, it won't just shake the internet. It will split it in half. This isn't the end. It's just the silence before impact.